Got my tie on.
You can't see me, fortunately, so it's all right.
Okay, the broadcast is live. Over to the chairman of the Audit Committee, Councillor David Harries, for today's meeting, 19th of November 2020.
Thank you. Welcome again to another remote meeting of the Audit Committee. So we'll kick straight into it. Item 1, apologies for absence or non-attendance.
I have received no apologies. Thank you, Chairman.
Ah, thank you. Declarations of interest. Would any member like to declare if they have any interest in what we're about to discuss? No, shaking their heads. Which brings us on to the minutes of the meeting held. Oh, we've got two, haven't we? One was the formal meeting of the chairman and the other one was the normal meeting in September. So do you accept those as a correct record, which I may at some point sign?
Yes.
Thank you. We'll move on then to chairman's announcements. So I haven't got anything devastating to declare. I should mention and welcome Denise Taylor, who's here in her new capacity of temporary assistant director and deputy section 151 officer, which I think you were anyway, weren't you, the deputy 151 officer? But Martin Henry, of course, has now been appointed to the substantive post at the West Northamptonshire Council, and he'll be here only when there are statutory matters to be considered. And as we don't have any today, we're showing our strength in depth that Denise is taking over. So I'm sure we're all perfectly happy with Denise being here to help us out.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we're moving on then, urgent business. I don't have any. So that brings us, and I'm looking at the participants, to the verbal update on the Statement of Accounts and Annual Government Statement 2019-20. We do have someone from our external auditors. I pause. Maria Green.
We are here, yes. Apologies, Chairman, we are here. It's just back-to-back meetings, so we are definitely here.
I can understand. And Justine's arrived too, so yes, you're rushing from meeting to meeting. Well, we've got to an item about the verbal update on our Statement of Accounts and Annual Government Statement. So would you like to give us that verbal update, please? We notice we don't have them here, so we've spotted that.
Chairman, I'm going to ask Justine to update you because Justine's closer to the audit work, and what I'm going to ask Justine to do is talk through where we are with the audit and then the bits that are currently just outstanding, if that's okay.
That's splendid. Yes, thank you, Justine. Go ahead. You're still muted.
We can't see you.
I think she's off mute now. Justine, is it a connection point? If it is, I'm happy to carry on. Okay, I'm going to carry on. So so basically where we are with the audit is the majority of the work has been completed, which is great. There are a few things that are currently outstanding where we're waiting on others in order to complete. So the first is the pension fund assurance that we're waiting on. The second is because of the merger of the councils, we need to include, there needs to be a disclosure in the accounts around that. And as such, we need to go through a process of trying to make sure that that's consistent across all of the councils involved, and also that as auditors we make the right, we point to it correctly within my audit report, I make the right comments on that merger and that disclosure, and that we're consistent. So that is also currently underway from the point of view of looking at how we do that, what those disclosures in the financial statements will be, and then certainly as auditors how we will point to that. So that could be within my audit report, and it's not a modified or changed report, it's just what we call an emphasis of matter, where I bring the reader's attention to the fact that you have a note in your accounts that talks about the fact that you're going to be merging as part of one of the Northampton unitaries. So that's basically one of the key things that's outstanding that we're working through currently. Pensions is the other one. I can see, Justine, you're on camera now. So did you want to come off mute and comment on anything that I might have forgotten?
Apologies for being late, Chair. It was a connection issue. No, you're absolutely right, Maria. The two issues are the pension fund audit for the Northamptonshire Pension Fund, and then the going concern review for all the districts that are merging into the two unitaries, the West and North, and we're doing that across Northamptonshire. So we've done everything that we can from a South Northampton Council point of view. It's just bringing together the merger work. So we won't be able to meet the 30th of November deadline, but it should be sort of relatively close to that, I would have thought.
And I think it's fair to say, Justine, that we're not bringing to you as those charged with governance concerns about, and the things you'd want to know from us, you know, concerns about the council and how they brought their accounts together, or indeed any concerns about any of the big ticket items within the accounts. I mean, clearly we work to levels of materiality. As you'll understand, we don't tick every penny through, but certainly there is nothing that I'm seeing at the moment that would impact on either my opinion, my conclusions around how the council's managed its resources and financial position. So from that point of view, there is nothing that I'm going to be modifying the opinion for. So I guess that's the main message you need, but clearly Justine and I are both focused on those outstanding items because we're pushing hard on them. So it was just to raise with you that we have got those outstanding, and we are going to keep pushing them. And, you know, ultimately, if they do make it before the end of November, then great, we'll get them over the line by then. But if they don't, then we will be pushing hard until we're able to sign those off.
Yeah. So, well, the 30th of November is, of course, the official deadline as extended. So, but it sounds unlikely. I mean, looking at my colleagues, committee colleagues, I mean, it will need to come to us. It seems unlikely, and we'll need to set up a special meeting. It seems unlikely we're going to do that by the 30th of November, frankly, doesn't it? I mean, we're fairly close to that now. And when you allow for the legal requirements for setting up meetings, it looks to me as if it's more likely, and we'll come to that when we get to our work program, it'll come to our meeting in January. I mean, is there, I mean, I'm looking at my colleagues really, but it seems to me if we miss the 30th November meeting, there's very little point in having a special meeting if we've already missed the official deadline. And the other thing I perhaps like to emphasise, and perhaps we ought to record here too, is that the issues that are delaying it are beyond our control. I mean, our officers have, again, like last year, produced the accounts on time. They're ready for signing. And these issues that you've raised quite rightly are issues that are beyond the control of South Northamptonshire Council. We're looking at other councils' preparedness for the unitary and the county pension fund. So it is frustrating for our folk. I'm sure you appreciate that we're doing everything right. We're working, our officers, I'm sure, work hard to get to the deadlines, and we don't hit them simply because of issues beyond our control. But I mean, that's where we are. It is frustrating. Any other member, any questions or comments? I'm looking around. No, stunned silence. So,
Chairman, if I may, just on your point there, which I think is an incredibly fair point, we will clearly in our reporting make it clear what the delays were and why, and also when we report to PSAA with regards to the timeline, we'll make it clear what it is that delayed us, because I think they're absolutely fair points that you raise.
thank you. I'd say we're not looking at you to blame you. This is
No, I understand.
because of events beyond all of our control, but it is frustrating. I must.
Chairman,
David, I certainly, for the chair, I definitely think it's wrong that it's got to this, it's come out this way. It's all been pushed into one tight time frame, and we end up not being party to it. So,
well, we'll be party to it because we'll sign them off. We'll sign the accounts.
Sorry, yes, but not actually have discussed it.
Sorry, not? I didn't hear you.
We will not have discussed it.
Well, we will.
Will we?
We'll go through the full process when we get them. Oh yeah, we'll have an informal briefing. So we'll have two opportunities. So we'll go through them in the usual detail. They just be past the deadline date.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We're yes. Yeah.
It's not good when we're an audit committee.
No. Well, there was an option that they could be approved elsewhere, and I knew that we wouldn't be keen on that. I think it should come to us as a committee. And I don't know, I was going to say confident, that's a bit rash, but that the intention is still that it would do that. I mean, we've got until the end of March for us to sign them off.
Yeah, I guess the point I'm making is that we hold everyone else to account through our committee, and then something like this sort of catches us out slightly.
Chairman, if I may say so, I don't think it catches us out.
Sandra.
I mean, we've known there's a big problem for a long time now, and we didn't, and it was
Yes.
a problem last year. The thing is, I think it's a national problem to do with the pensions, isn't it? Those chaps beavering away in the basement of County Hall. I mean, they did come before us at one stage, and we were not impressed, were we? However, but I think it's a national problem on the pensions fund. Am I right? Local government pensions.
Maria,
there's varying issues this year that, of course, so the main challenges for us this year are twofold. So one is we had the going concern standard and the requirements there were strengthened, and then with the impact of COVID and everything else, we've had to do more of a piece of work around that. Now here, we've completed a lot of that work, but because obviously of the merging organisations, that's caused us an issue, because my going concern assessment goes from 12 months from when I sign. So obviously that takes us into December or November 21, which is obviously post-merger. So that's the first thing, which is obviously particular to you. With regards to pensions, there are issues in different places. It's not that every organisation is going to be late because of pensions. It does depend. So there are different issues in different pension funds depending on the nature of their assets, and there are issues around valuation of assets, again because of in some cases, not all, in some cases because of the implications of COVID. And then we've seen, for example, valuers struggling. I mean, if we take it away from pension assets and just to normal property, plant and equipment, and you look at some of the valuations there, we've seen valuers putting caveats in their reports around values of assets because of the impact of COVID again, and the impact on trade and obviously rental income and all sorts of other things that impact on the value of those assets. So and clearly the markets as well. So there are a number of things. So Councillor Barnes, you're absolutely right. There are a number of issues. They're not all, there isn't one issue that's specific to all councils nationally, but there are issues up and down the country this year that has caused a lot of additional work to be required, and obviously more challenge than in meeting deadlines.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. So, and yes, I'm looking around. There don't seem to be any other comments. So, thank you for coming and explaining all that to us. And I think we're just probably to note the update. And I would like to record that that the delay is through no fault of ours. We were ready, and that will be in. I'm looking at Maria Grindley again. That will be in the final report and the statement that the delay was. We were ready, and it was extraneous issues that delayed it.
Yeah, we'll make it clear that the items that happened after November were those specific items. We will point to those very clearly in our report.
Thank you. So, do you, Richard, you're going to tell me what I should have said? Please do.
No, I'm just going to say, Mr. Chairman, that will be alluded to in the minutes as well, that these issues are of no fault of South Northamptonshire councils or our external auditors.
Splendid. Thank you very much.
No problem.
So do we agree that to note that on that basis?
Agreed.
Yes,
Agreed.
agree.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Maria and Justine, for rushing into the meeting. You're free to rush into your whatever next meeting you have now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And we'll move on to internal audit. Anand is here. Anand, would you like to take us through that, please?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. If I go to our progress report to the end of October, if I go to page 15, section 1, progress against our agreed plan, can I first of all again put on record our thanks to officers for helping us through these difficult times to progress the reviews that we were able to progress thus far. Chair, since our last meeting, we've managed to issue a draft report relating to Section 106 agreements, and in the box below that, we've got some ongoing work in Q3. I'm pleased to say the finance systems work is now complete. An exit meeting has been held, and a draft report is also imminent there. The homelessness revenues and benefits and health and safety reviews are all underway, and so is the transition to the new authority review. And arrangements are in place. Letters of engagement have been agreed for the 3 other reviews. Chair, if I can go to the next page, page 16, which relates to the implementation of agreed actions. As at the end of October, there were a total of 7 outstanding recommendations from a total of 99 that were meant to be implemented by the end of October. There were only 7 to be implemented. These have been deferred, but 4 of those 7 are due to be implemented at the end of November, which is another week away. So that'll bring it down to 3, which is very, very commendable. Chair, if I move on to page 17, the internal plan and profile, well, it just basically repeats in a way what I've just said about the ongoing work, etc. So everything has been scoped and agreed, and a lot of work is in progress. If I move on to the next page, page 18, it gives you a summary of the 7 outstanding recommendations and what management are doing to implement them, in particular the 4 that I've said will be implemented by the end of November, and the 3 others that have been deferred for slightly later. That's it, Chair, for that. The progress report. I'm prepared to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, folks?
Yes, could I just ask about 106, please, Chairman?
Please do, yes.
That's a little interest of mine.
Me too.
I assume you were looking at the rate of speed of payment, were you? And when you were looking at 106 agreements, once whatever the money is going to be spent on, it is then paid out reasonably quickly. Is that what you were looking at exactly, or was it on the detail of what the 106 should be spent on?
Chair, the review looked at that the money coming in is being spent and that arrangements are in place. Yes. To ensure that the money will be spent, and therefore reducing the possibility of clawbacks.
Yes.
And to that extent, I think it's been reported to various committees that I've found during our review that the officer responsible has been bringing reports to various committees, with plans of how the money is going to be spent over the, you know, from the time it's been received. Then there's normally a 10-year window to spend the money, and plans have been presented to committee of when those likely clawback dates are. And it,
Yes.
it seems from our work that based on the preparations in train, the potential for clawback is very much, you know, being reduced by the actions the officers are taking to spend the money.
Yes, I think that's right. I mean, I know that probably our chairman may allude to a little local difficulty he had, but it was a question of us paying over the money to the National Health Service, which had, as I understand it, David will correct me, agreed to what it should be spent on. And once it got to that big black hole called the NHS, they then thought they'd changed their minds. But I think we're getting somewhere now, aren't we, David?
Yes, oh, it's taken years, literally, and one of them actually we've passed the date where it should have been spent, but the developers haven't asked for it back, and it was money, as Councillor Barnes says, that was transferred to NHS England. It could only be spent in one place, and each time our local surgery put in a project, they kicked it back and said, no, you can't do that. In the meantime, there's £70,000 in their kitty that's not being used. But we are getting there, as Sandra says, we're and I think it has helped the fact that there's been this internal audit view of it, the fact that scrutiny committee have got hold of it, and that we've got hold of them. It ultimately might be a success story, because in the past, Section 106, we didn't really monitor it. So I'm hoping we can eventually look upon it as a success story.
Chair, if I might add, I think the setting up of the subgroups, the scrutiny committee subgroups for transport and NHS certainly helped to clarify some of the issues of the money not being spent. The fact that you're bringing in speakers from the various external organisations such as the NHS and transport representatives from the county council, etc.
Yes, that's very true, Anad, but we've only been waiting since July to get the chief executive of the clinical commissioning group to appear before us. And I'm not altogether hopeful that on the 1st of December, anybody's actually going to pitch up, but I shall pray very hard on that, if I was a praying person, that is.
I can trump that. I've been on the case for years. Any other internal audit comments? Tony?
Chairman, I'm just making sure this is the right question to ask this time, but we've just talked about sort of working groups and task force looking at the way 106 has been spent. We've just completed the work on the transport 106 work in Silverstone Brackley area. I just wondered when that was going to come for review to audit. Maybe Richard can answer the question, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. With regards to the Section 106 Transport Working Group, my understanding is that group has concluded. It was a report was submitted to scrutiny in October, and the Assistant Director of Planning and Economy will be submitting a report to full council. As far as I'm aware, it's out of scope for me. I was simply tasked with ensuring the group runs smoothly and stuck to task. But as far as I'm aware, a report will be submitted to full council probably in December with regards to its findings. Obviously, the findings were noted by scrutiny committee, but as far as I'm aware, there's no plans for it to come to audit committee. But obviously, the next meeting of audit committee is January, so it would have been to full council by then. So it's yes. Unclear how it could come to audit committee.
I'm not sure it needs to, as long as it's done.
Yes.
I was just linking it with the 106 problems that many groups are experiencing.
I would, if I may again, Chairman, I would hope that the final report going to full council might bring some closure to the matter, potentially, rather than it coming through audit committee first. I don't know what members' views are on that.
Yeah, personally, I don't see a need for it to come through audit committee. I don't know if you agree, Tony. I mean, I think it's been thoroughly looked at and we've come to a conclusion. And if once it goes to council, then I don't think there's an audit role there. But I think the whole process, it's been helpful to have internal audit and scrutiny. These things wouldn't have happened, wouldn't have been progressed without that. So we're getting there, even going back to the labyrinthine bureaucratic organisation at the health service, which constantly changes. I'm more hopeful now because of all these involvements that we've prodded people that we might actually get this money spent where it should be spent.
Yes, and I'm hoping, Chairman, if I may say so, that once the 106 regarding the health money is, we've actually got some clear answers. We may want to make some recommendations which could be carried forward to the new unitary, because the problems will not cease. And I think it's very important then that local councillors will be engaged with the process in their divisions, as they will be, because I don't want it all to, particularly, I'm only interested obviously in South Northants money, but I don't want that to disappear into some big black hole, and our residents will not see the benefit of those monies.
Yeah, I heartily concur with that, and that was something we were keen to do. And I don't know what goes on in our colleagues in other councils who will be part of our unitary at West Northants with us, but I think that's something they should be looking at, because it's a significant amount of money, and I don't know what they do. Now, we weren't terribly good at it. We're much better now at monitoring and making sure that money goes where it should be spent. But I agree with you that we should be looking to remind the unitary to get something in place, because whatever we do following the scrutiny and the internal audit, it won't be everything won't be finished. There'll still be outstanding monies
that
will need to be monitored beyond the life of South Northants Council. So we certainly need to find a way to ensure that's picked up.
And I think if I don't want to prolong it, but I think one of the main thoughts that I have is that this money, I just relate to £1.1 million for Toaster, is being organised to be spent without any consultation whatsoever with the residents or this council for the benefit of the patients. And we have no knowledge of what they decided to do, and the grounds they've decided to do it is, we can't recruit any GPs, which is a load of rubbish, frankly. However, I won't go on, and we'll have an opportunity hopefully to scrutinise it in a bit more detail.
Well, it's an important point, but yes, it's audit is on the fringes of that, I suspect, but
yes,
certainly needs pursuing, and we need to pin down those grand panjandrums at the health service who are not used to the democratic process as we are. Okay, well, thank you for that. So we are being asked to note the contents of the internal audit progress report and we didn't mention the satisfaction survey results, but we've seen them for 2019-20. So do we agree to do that?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll move on then to Agenda 8, which is the Performance, Finance and Risk Monitoring Report. Beth Kent is here, I see. Would you like to gallop through it, or canter through it, or skim gently through it, whichever you prefer?
Thank you, Chairman. If I may meander through it.
Yes, that'll do, yes.
Obviously, following a suggestion last year, there's now a summary at the beginning of the report that gives you an easy read before you launch into the report itself, which is section 2. So what I suggest I do is just quickly canter through this. If I take the risk summary first, which is section 2.4 onwards, as you can see in the appendix to this report, I give you an eye test each meeting set out the leadership risks. I do apologise for that, Councillor Barnes. I have updated it over the last year to try and make it better to read, but at the same time, I try and get it to fit on a single page. So I'm a victim of my own enthusiasm, so I do apologise for that. I think the headline in terms of risk, though, is that we are managing the risks well still at a leadership level. In light of the COVID situation, we've included how we're mitigating the risks in respect of COVID, and also the one risk that's changed since the last meeting is risk LO3, which is management capacity. As was touched on by the chairman at the beginning of the meeting, Martin Henry and Jane Carr have moved on to West Northamptonshire, so that's reduced our senior management capacity, but obviously others are stepping into the breach, as it were, including Denise, as we've talked about at the beginning of the meeting. So that's the only change in the risk since last time. In terms of performance, there's a commentary in the report. And obviously some members will know that that goes to scrutiny in a lot more detail. And the other bit I'd just like to highlight as I continue my canter is the finance summary in section 2.2 onwards. That's very much a moving feast, as I'm sure Denise will pick up any questions upon. Sorry, Denise. In that obviously the COVID situation is causing a shortfall in our finances. That there is a table in the report that sets that out at the time of writing, but it is very much a moving feast, and more grants are coming in throughout the year, and obviously more government initiatives are coming online. So I'd welcome any questions, if I may, from members about the report.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Stunned silence.
I have that effect on people.
Well, it covers everything. You see, you don't. You've dealt with it all, and it's with these sort of progress reports. I mean, the differences are often marginal, and we tend to be looking for alarm bells and panic buttons. But although they're potentially there, I don't think we see anything to get desperately worried about. But there's clearly areas of concern that, which is why it's so good to keep them monitored.
Yes, and also if there are any issues which become more alarming, as it were, we would endeavour to let members know quickly, and obviously bring those to your attention in an exception report or whatever.
Yeah, if I may say so, I think our biggest risk is the government running out of money, actually, in order to fund all these bright new initiatives they keep coming up with. And how it's all going to get paid back, I do not know, but I think that is when they keep talking about billions of money, which is our money when all said and done at the end of the day. So I only hope that the wherever they keep all the gold has got sufficient in it.
Yes, well, I suppose it's rather like, even I'm not old enough to remember, but the sort of the Lend-Lease that we managed to get from the Second World War from America, which kept us in hock for about 50 years.
That's right.
So we could be in the same position.
Yeah, we could be. Chair, could I just clarify something? Because paragraph 2.2 and then table 4 talks about worst case around COVID and the pandemic if there's another lockdown. Are you talking about a third lockdown, or was this written before the second one came in?
That's a good question, if I may. It was written before the second lockdown came in. So it is very much a moving feast, I'm afraid.
Right, so we are actually looking at the worst case.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
If I may, Chair, on that, looking at the September figures and considering the October figures we're drafting at the moment as well, we are in the second lockdown at the moment, and we're not actually seeing a huge change in those figures.
So there we are. So hope for the best and plan for the worst. But it looks as if we're still relatively secure as anyone can be in these troubled times.
Yes. Can I just ask another question, Chair, if I may? Denise, if we don't spend all the monies, do we have to pay it back?
On those grants, no. The grants we're getting for those, majority of those are not ring fenced. There's a couple that are around enforcement, and those ones we would have to spend or return that money. Majority of it is just money that's allocated to us. And what we're finding is we've got expenditure addition of about 2 million. The grants we're getting in at the moment have been 1.6 million. So we are actually spending way above the grants we're getting in, and some of that's offset with income, different things happening as well. Some of that money is still coming in at the moment as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Chris, did you? No. So I think then we can note the quarterly performance risk and finance monitoring report. We've reviewed the leadership risk register and identified any issues for further consideration, which we'll get up for, what was that, Q3, Jeff, was it? So we'll get...
Chairman, that was Q2. So the next
Q2.
update will be as at the end of December.
Something to look forward to.
Indeed so, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So do you agree to do those things as we're recommended to do?
Agreed.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all agreed then. So we then move on to item 9, which is the Treasury Management Report, which Denise, I'm sure you'll take us through this.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite a standard report in that sense, and no major changes from what we've seen previously. We are considering the security, the liquidity and the yield of all the investments that we're doing. If I take you to table 3.8, what we are finding is that on the interest at the moment, once the investments we've got, and once those investments mature and we move on to new investments, that those interest rates are reducing each time we do that. Currently, we're about 11,000 adrift, so we've under recovered by 11,000 at the moment. By the end of the year, at the bottom of paragraph 3.9, we're looking to that forecast will be nearer 60,000. And it's just really because interest rates are dropping. We don't want to put our finances at any more risk than they are already. We're trying to secure those rates, but just safeguard the money and not take any further risk on that. So we have to accept it in that sense that our rates do drop and we are going to underachieve on the income.
Thank you.
Any questions on that report at all?
Any questions or comments? Tony? Yeah, Tony first, then Chris.
Okay, thanks, Chair. We talk about interest rates, and I guess the bit I'm sort of scary about is what does happen if they talk about this negative interest. Will that actually impact us as a council or not?
I think it would have minimal impact because a lot of our investments are already out. I think there's the table further down. Is it in section 2 in the private that would say where we actually invest all our money? A majority of that is with local authorities at the moment. So that money is quite safe. Those interest rates wouldn't change on those investments that we've got. What is more subject to change is where we've got money in money market funds. What we're finding is we can't invest all the money that we've got. Some of that we obviously need for cash flow. Some of that we're finding if we try to invest too short term, then the interest rates are worse than keeping that in a money market fund. What we are being very careful of is what money market funds, what investments we are using, trying to keep those in investments that are making us money, not losing us money. So I'm not going to negative rates at all at the moment. And we're just constantly listening to the Treasury advisors of where those that might be in jeopardy. In that sense, we've got several funds that we can use. All of those at the moment are still profitable to us, although at a minimal level. I think our exposure is quite minimal at the moment.
I mean, it's good to hear. I'll just refer back to Iceland, and I guess we all thought that was very stable at the time until suddenly it wasn't.
Well, some council treasurers were aware of the problems in Iceland and put money into it.
And
so,
Daventry, for a start.
Anyway, sorry, Chris, you wanted it.
It was just really a follow-up on that, in that I assume that we're steering clear of lending any money to Croydon.
I can confirm we don't have any money in Croydon at this point in time, and we wouldn't be investing any money with them, which is one thing the Treasury advisors have said, please do not do so. So no, we don't have any money with them. A lot of our money is with the local authorities though, but that isn't one of them.
The worry is there will be others, I suspect, following Croydon and Northamptonshire. So, but yeah, I mean, our policy and philosophy, well, I think all the public sector, most councils, if they're sensible, there's this security and liquidity come first before yield. So if you get lousy interest rates, you have to put up with that. That's the fact of life these days. You know, what we don't want to do is lose all our money by investing it in some Icelandic bank somewhere. But I don't think we'll do that.
No.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, in which case we note the contents of the it's the semi-annual report, apparently, for Treasury Management. Do we agree to do that?
Agreed.
Thank you. That's unanimous. So we then move on to item 10, which is this independent review into local authority audit. You should have got the supplementary paper on that. So, I mean, it's mainly, we've commented on this before in detail, and we've had it before the main report was published. This is mainly now what we're looking at is about the fees and finances. Denise, would you like to explain it to us, please?
Yeah, you've seen the initial consultation that went through in September 19, and I think we've responded to that in the December of 19. The Redmond review, which the independent report then came out September this year, which made quite a range of recommendations. And you've got the full report there that you can have. You're welcome to have a look through that in detail. What's then come out at the time I'm writing this report for Audit Committee is that we've got a second consultation now that's come out from public sector audit appointments, and that's on the proposed new systems for fee variations. So it's asking, I think, 6 questions and looking around any national variations, which could be due through to changes in legislation, something like that. Any local variations, which could be to specific instances that result just to one authority, not across the board. But also looking at those, they're proposing a 25% fee increase, which sounds quite sizable in that sense. But when you look over the previous years, where we've probably reduced fees by about 48% to audit sectors, then it does make you wonder whether it is viable at the moment or whether there should be a fee increase going forwards. What we've done at the moment is draft responses to those questions, and I'm happy to share those with you and then ask for you to return any considerations that you want to be included between now and say about the 25th of November, so we can then respond to that by the 1st of December.
I think that will be useful. I mean, the 6 questions I've got, I've got page 110 here. I'm not quite sure where that is on my list. They're different page numbers, but they're in the summary sheet, but they're related to the fees and finance. I mean, they're sort of leading questions, and but I think we more or less established, I think, when we put comments in before the main review was published, the comments were that we may need to address an increase in fees, but that should go alongside an increase in the quality of the external audit. So I think there's a view that you tend to get what you pay for, and the audit fees have gone down. I'm looking at Denise, I think 48% over the period. And so you can understand why external auditors are struggling and saying they can't provide the service for the fees that they're getting. But what we need to do is to, if we say, yes, we accept an increase in fees is appropriate, we need to put, and looking at the 6 questions, it's the dreaded 1.6, any other comments. And I'm assuming that when Denise will send us something to as an idea of what the thoughts are. But I think we need to say, and I'm sure that I'm looking around my colleagues, that we would want to say that there should be an equivalent increase in quality. We just don't want to pay fees because we accept fees need to go up, but they need to go up to ensure we get the proper service. So I think it's important that we bring that to their attention when we respond to these questions, which, like most questions in these things, lead you towards the answer they want you to give. Sorry, I've rambled a bit there. Any other member want to say anything? Or Chris?
It really, but I suppose picking up on that, and this isn't a criticism of our current auditors, but it's merely a comment of experience in the past, but that there probably ought to be some sort of penalty clause within the fee structure, that if the auditor doesn't deliver the audit on the timescale that was agreed, that there ought to be some sort of penalty there.
That's a good point. Lots of contracts have penalties. If the contractors don't do a particular job at a set time, then they're penalised. So that's a very good
yes,
point.
Chairman, I think I'd agree with that, because their excuse was they couldn't recruit, if you recall.
Yeah.
That's why everything was late. And I think that's unacceptable in this day and age, to say, oh, well, terribly sorry, you know, we can't get the staff. Well, in which case they shouldn't have the contract, in my view.
But there may be a time lag, though. That's the problem. But when is this? When will this take effect, Denise? Will it be from next year or the following year?
I think it's actually applicable for 2021, so it would apply for the audit of this year's accounts that we will compile at the end of the year.
Wow. Well, they're not going to recruit staff in that time, are they?
What they're finding is it's a national issue of recruiting and retaining those staff.
Yes, that's it.
It's not very sexy, is it, in the accountancy field?
Well, that's the excuse with the doctors. They can't recruit.
The GPs, yes. Yeah. So, folks, do we? I mean, it seems to me we can't go through in committees are terrible things for going in great detail. But if Denise, if you can send us some thoughts on the 6 questions, but we'll need, if we get them then individually by email, we will need to return them if you've got any comments fairly quickly because of this deadline. So if you, well, when you send it out, Denise, if you could put a deadline when you want responses by, and silence means assent. So if you don't respond, we'll assume you're content with what's being suggested. But could I say we should perhaps go along those lines if we agree that we should put something in there, presumably under any other comments, that if we have an increase in fees, which we accept is probably warranted, we would expect a corresponding increase in the quality of the service. And it seems to me there's another point, if you could put this in, Denise, that Chris has raised, that maybe there should be penalty clauses in it, so there's they lose some of their fee income if they don't meet deadlines. I mean, it needs to be qualified because there may be reasons beyond their control that they don't meet deadlines, and they may not meet them because some councils have failed to prepare their accounts properly. But I'm sure that something generally worded that leaves it reasonably open as a suggestion for consideration. Would members agree to something like that?
Agreed.
So is that okay? So Richard, you'd probably want some sort of proposal, I'm guessing, for. So I think we're saying that we note the reports, and we will be sent suggested response to the 6 questions for responding to the consultation exercise, and that will include something to the effect that the increase in fees, we accept there should be some increase in fees, but we would expect an equal increase in the quality of the service. Sorry,
Yes,
that's
obviously.
very vague as a proposal, isn't it?
That's okay, Chairman. So obviously we'll have the first resolution of the report noted. Personally, my advice would be we may not need that as a resolution. It can simply be alluded to in the minutes. That will be the case. Obviously, with the responses and what comes out, it's a bit of a moving feast. So it's entirely up to you. If we wanted that as a resolution, we wouldn't need a proposer and a seconder or to vote on it, as it's not something we're approving. It's just simply a further recommendation as such. So it is entirely up to you as to whether you'd like that as a further resolution or just simply to be alluded to in the minutes with everything noted. I'll leave that to you.
Well, I think at the end of the day, as long as it's done, are you comfortable with that, Denise? We're sort of gaily going on saying what should and shouldn't happen, but are you comfortable with that approach?
We've got an officer's response for drafting already, so I will share that with you and obviously add the comments that have come out tonight as well, and then we'll put that through.
Well, that's fine. Well, I'm happy if that's minuted, whichever is the most appropriate way, and we will see it, so it'll come to each of us. I'm looking around at members. Are you content with that? Thank you. We'll leave it to you then, Richard, to record that in the most appropriate way. And Denise, sorry, we've landed you with something else, but if you don't mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Which brings us on to review of the committee work programme, which is going to change, isn't it? Because we now need to add in the 21st of January, unless we have a special meeting, which seems unlikely in my view. We need to add in the item on the final sign-off of the accounts, and presumably the external audit annual letter, the usual stuff that we do for signing off accounts. Other than that, are there any other changes, Denise, that you're aware of, or is looking at the list of those on the 21st of January? No, any other questions or comments? I can only hear silence. Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's golden, don't worry.
I'm taking silence as assent.
Agreed.
So, subject to adding the usual signed accounts, I'm taking that we agree the work programme as submitted with those added.
Agreed.
Yes, Chairman, you haven't got party after the last meeting of the Audit Committee.
Party?
Well, a party.
Oh, a party.
Yes.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Well, we might not be allowed. It might have to be a remote party still.
Well, I don't like remote parties. They're not the same. No.
Well, I'm hoping at some point we do get the accounts to sign off, because we've only got 2 more chances now.
Yes, indeed. Perhaps
Well,
we'll have to have virtual cake then instead.
Yes, a virtual cake. How ghastly. Yeah.
Just a question on that, Mr. Chairman. Should it slip and get to a point towards the end of March, i.e. drift to April the 1st, what would be the procedure?
Well, someone else will have to do it, I'm assuming. I'm looking at Denise or Richard, but I mean, it seems to me that once we have gone, it's up to the next authority will do it. Well, it's not like the rules where, although I suppose we will exist until such time as West Northamptonshire Council are elected. So there'll be a shadow in existence, but it won't be us because we won't exist as a council.
Yeah, I think, Chair, we cease to exist in April.
Because West Northants actually start on the 1st of April, don't they?
Yes.
I believe from April onwards, it will be a West Northants consideration.
So if we've got some accounts not signed off by April the 1st, I don't see how the new council can sign off SNC accounts.
Well, they will, because they're taking over all the latent responsibilities of each of the constituent authorities. So
Yeah, what you've got to remember is that we're looking at last year's accounts now. So the current year, the last year of SNC, we wouldn't be auditing anyway, would we?
Good point.
Because those ones we were expecting between April and September next year, and obviously those ones couldn't be signed off until the previous year was signed off.
Yes, the domino effect. So it's but after we cease to exist, it'll be someone else's responsibility.
Interesting learning curve, I
Which
think.
is why I'm sure we're all quite keen to do it, and I do expect that we will get them before we disappear up our own unitary. I think it'll happen. So with that, do you agree the work programme as amended?
Agreed.
Agreed.
I don't like it when it goes quiet. I get nervous. We now move on to the private part. So we're going to exclude the public and the press, so that I shan't read it all out, but it's under section 100A, the Local Government Act 72, the public and press be excluded because we are going to consider exempt information under the provisions of Schedule 12A, Part 1, paragraphs 3 and 7. All agreed that we do that?
Agreed.
We're the only ones here anyway, so.
No, there's two watching.
Are there? I haven't
Yeah.
got that on my list. Right.
No, they're not on your list, but if you go to YouTube, there's two people watching it.
Oh, of course, it's YouTube. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm